The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
If you're building, buying, or selling a home, the real estate crew's got news for you at the Real Estate House Party.
With attorney Rick Carter,
Real Estate House Party.
paralegal Kathy Holtshouser,
Real Estate House Party. Come in, have fun.
and comedian Tony V. Now, here's real estate attorney Rick Carter.
Welcome and thanks for joining us today at the Real Estate House Party. We got paralegal extraordinaire Kathy Holtshouser.
I'm in Tony's seat.
You're in Tony's seat today.
Yeah, I feel good.
So we're going to tell Tony's best jokes. We're going to have
I feel
his
like I
best
have
one
a
line.
million jokes to tell everyone.
And we got Harry Pass. You might have seen him in a lot of commercials. He's usually flying along in his boat with about 7 scantily clad girls in the back.
Really?
Saying,
I don't think
so. Saying, I've done well in real estate, right?
I wish.
You're an
Although
icon,
Yeah.
right?
You're an icon. You're an icon.
Yeah.
So we got a lot.
Did you train Ricotta?
I did. Rick
So
was my first employee.
That's right.
Wow.
Right. And he's
Right out
still
of
in
law
business.
school.
That's
Right out
right.
of-
We had
right out
a
of
great
law
time.
school.
Absolutely.
I didn't know what we were going to talk about, but this is a great subject. Well, how was he?
He was awesome.
He was?
He was.
Yeah.
Did
he
he
was
do
probably the most.
everything you told him to do?
Everything. He
Yeah.
was A plus.
Coachable?
Wow.
And,
That's pretty good.
Because
Yeah.
in later years, he just does whatever he wants.
Oh my God! So I went down to an A plus to
Yeah.
a C minus. Is that what you're saying now?
Well, no, he knows where his bread is buttered, so if I
Yeah.
tell him to do something, but mostly he just does what
Yeah,
he
no,
wants.
Harry. Yeah,
Rick
we
was great.
we way back when there. Yeah,
What
so
year
you-
was that?
in the late
1980s.
'80s.
Yeah, 86, 87.
Wow.
Yeah. So Harry's the past, you're the present, and I think that you two are going to be in the future. I think. Well, you're debatable. You're debatable.
My future is very, very
Very
grim.
thin. I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
I mean, within a month or two is still the future. So
Okay, like next week.
she's
or the
been
end of-
counting
future.
down, she's been counting down her days since I don't know.
I'm getting too old for this.
Since the '80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since 1990, you pulled in, right?
And now I have a daughter that's actually working at a law firm doing real estate, and I can just see it. I just say, I said, go to law school. You need to go to law school. And
Yeah, it's come full circle
yeah,
for you.
yeah.
Well, we
Which-
all. I have
well,
a
we just-
daughter.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
real estate world, you
Yeah.
have your
Yeah, my son's helping me out now too.
Really?
Douglas, yeah.
Good.
the next generation.
We were just talking. I think between the three of us, we have about 100 years of experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that right?
That's
Yeah.
30 some
Yeah.
odd each.
Yeah.
30, 35 here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Feels like 50, but
Oh my God, that's a lot of closings.
I
It just
know.
seems like yesterday your parole officers was calling me and saying, "Can you help Kathy Jacobson? She's on the streets of Winchester and we got to get her off. And you think you can help her out?" And she's done magnificently there under my
Yeah.
tutelage,
Do you
which is
know-
actually a direct result of Harry.
Do you
It's
know
actually
what
from-
his, well, it may not have been your question, right? But when I showed up at the interview
Oh yeah.
for
This is how
Rick,
young we were. Go ahead.
their first question was, do you have a car? I'm like, what kind of rinky-dink operation am I applying for?
You should see the employees we had before her.
And
Yeah.
then the next question was, now, do you know what a municipal lien certificate is? I'm like, these bunch of clowns, like, they need me. They
Yeah,
need me.
yeah.
I better get here.
Oh, you'll like this one. We had this one. We weren't. I didn't think we were going to do this, but evidently,
No, this is fun.
This is fun. Before Kathy came along, municipal lien certificates. I was telling the girl, all right, you got to put these municipal lien certificates. Got to get. You taught me that very early.
Yeah.
Don't wait on that because it's going to take 10 days. So get them right out. Right.
Yeah.
So
No, get 'em ready.
Get them ready.
This is
So
what you said.
I told the the paralegal that I thought had a little experience. I said, all right, get these municipal lien certificate requests out.
Ready,
Get them ready.
ready.
Yeah.
So like days later, I see a stack of them.
Well, I asked her, I go, what are
Yeah.
these doing here? And she goes, well, Rick asked me to get them ready.
She didn't
Well,
know
they were
them-
ready.
She didn't know them to
I said, I actually think he probably meant to put them in the mail, but I would only been there for 2 days, so like, who was I? Like,
It wasn't in the handbook. Oh, all right. You have to mail them out too. So,
Yeah.
so since then, you have done a little bit of a real. This show we could probably do about a five-part seminar. So, and I got to talk to our Ed Sullivan, our producer extraordinaire, because he usually thinks we're not going to jump into real questions until about the 10-minute mark.
Wow.
But,
Oh, wow.
but we're breaking records today.
10 minutes would be good.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think the longest I saw was 22 minutes.
Yeah.
wow. And I get a little antsy by then, right?
And then the show only lasted till 25, so we had 3 minutes of good material. But Harry has done a lot of real estate investing. So there's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of tips that Harry could probably provide us. You always see these seminars, so I think we could talk about a lot of things. Let's knock one thing right out of the box right off the bat. No money down situations. I don't see them. I actually have done a no money down where you're not bringing any money to the closing. But usually those properties are something that's just not desirable to the normal buyer. And you have to come up with a no money down situation. So the one I did was I bought a piece of property that was on leased owned property out of Rockport. So banks couldn't finance on that, and the seller knew that.
So you have to find a creative way to purchase the property without a mortgage.
Right, and the seller knew that, and he says, "All right, well, I'll just loan you the money for now." So that was a true no money down.
Private
but if that
mortgage.
was right, exactly. So that was just if it was just a conventional loan that you could get on that property, then everyone else would be able to do it. So have you ever bought no money down?
No.
Right.
And that's like the biggest fallacy.
Right.
If you want to buy property, especially like foreclosed properties, you have to have all your ducks lined up in a row.
Right.
And plus, if you want to show up at an auction, right, you have to have your cashier's check.
Yeah, so, 5,000, some are 10 or 15,000.
Right, depending on the value or what they perceive the value to be.
You guys are already jumping into foreclosure. We'll go right to that.
Yeah.
So let's just discount no money downs right. Those are very difficult.
Right.
So when you see seminars, we can promote how to do a no money down. Very difficult.
Yeah,
right?
it's like.
So let's go to all right, let's jump right into that then. If you're buying, and I know you've done this, but this is not for the faint of heart to go to a foreclosure and buy a foreclosure.
To an auction, right?
To the auction itself. Now, obviously, it will depend on, Harry was lucky. We've talked about this before, where Harry was lucky enough when, Harry's very good at this. He's buying when no one else is buying, and he's selling when no one else is selling.
Right.
So I think
that's kind of the key, right?
I've tried that, but right now everybody is buying and selling because the real estate market is so hot.
Right. So you were telling me, like in probably, actually maybe even like 5-6 years ago, the auctioneers and the banks were calling you, and then when you pulled in at an auction, you were the only one there.
Yeah.
And they would literally say, "Well, how much do you want to bid?"
Yeah, I remember one on Revere Beach in 1994. I was the only person at the auction.
Yeah.
Did you get it?
Yeah, because the auctioneer said, "What do you want to pay for it?"
Right.
And it was, it was worth, around 100,000. I said, "All right, 50."
Well, didn't he start off and say,
Yeah,
"Will you give us 80?"
Yeah, he tried to get 80, and then he said, "Would you do 50?" And I said, "No." And we just kind of negotiated between himself and me until we came up to a number that he agreed on.
Are the auctioneers hired by the lender that is foreclosing on the property,
yes,
right?
yeah. So these are employees of the bank.
They're kind of the employee of the bank. So do they have a number in their head?
Yes, they have a number, and they usually start with that number, although some auctioneers will start lower and try to get people to bid it up.
So you, as the prospective buyer, don't really know where they're going to start, but you're going to have your check just in case, right?
We have an idea. I mean, on public records, you can look up what the original mortgage amount is. So you know that, and then you add in interest and costs, and so it's usually a lot higher than that. But sometimes they go for less, and sometimes they go for a lot higher.
No, that's
so it's
that's
really
a
you
good
don't
point
know.
there.
You don't really know.
So say there's a $300,000 mortgage out, and you can tell the person hasn't made a mortgage payment in a year. So it's probably up to whatever, $325,000 plus, and then there's attorney costs for the. So would you bid the $325,000, or would you wait for the auctioneer?
You wait for the auctioneer. The auctioneer starts off with his initial bid, or he'll open it up for bids. And some people, will bid $10, just to get it going.
Right.
But the bank usually jumps in and close to their number, and usually when they hit their number, they stop and they let the bidders go at, each other and try to bump it up as high as they can.
Well, another thing, I attended an auction for a friend. It was a neighbor, and she was just kind of like, maybe she could get in or whatever, or just kind of like a informational type of thing. People show up, sight unseen. They've never been inside the property, and a lot of them are almost like professionals, or they've done their homework. Like they know exactly what the value of the house is, or give or take. They know if there's outstanding taxes. They know a lot of information.
Yeah, like us. We know all that
What's
stuff
your homework?
before.
What would you do to prep for an auction?
Well, first thing we do, we look up what the mortgage amount, original mortgage amount is, and if it's way too high, we usually won't go.
Right.
And then we also look to see if a property is vacant, because a vacant property is a lot easier to buy, and you deal with
Because
whole eviction process.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
If you win the bid at the auction and there's a tenant in,
You buy subject to that
you probably
tenant.
have a problem.
Would you ever buy
Probably.
a property with a tenant in the property?
I've done it, and I try not to.
Yeah.
And typically the tenant is the owner that didn't
That's
make
right.
their mortgage payment. So what are the chances of them paying you rent? Or
No, they're not
how
going
the heck
to.
are you going to get
And
them out of there?
Here's the problem: is that person, if they're the owner that got foreclosed, they can bring up defenses to the foreclosure during the eviction process. So now they can bring up and say it was an illegal foreclosure, it was predatory lending, all the defenses that they would bring in court. And now
Right.
they can bring that up in the eviction. So now they can drag
You don't
this
have
on.
a copy of my note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them say, they were scammed.
Right.
And,
Right.
that the banks were the ones at fault. And
Let's,
they could get a judge that could side with them and put aside
Of course.
the foreclosure. All the money you put in could be gone.
Right.
So buying
and then
with
that
a
wouldn't
tenant
be
is
worth
difficult.
it, right?
No, and it's usually not worth the risk. And, and then there's the human element. Now you have to evict, family or, people that
Someone
have come
that
across.
owned-
Yeah,
that
they've
was
had
their home.
they've had hard times.
Right.
Everybody goes through that.
Have you had to evict anyone before?
Usually I've worked it out.
Yeah.
I usually
Cash
have
for
some.
keys?
Yeah, well, usually I've already spoken to the owner. If there's someone there, I very rarely will bid on it unless I know I can work with this person.
Right.
I'm not in the business
Yeah,
of
you're not
evicting
being a
people. I don't
jerk,
want to
yeah.
do that. I want to buy a property that's already vacant, and
Make money and
move on.
Yeah.
And not force a person out of the house. It's sad to see them go, and I don't want to be a party to that.
So from our end, they should probably do, Harry, you probably recommend this, a title search on the property, because you're going to be buying.
Yeah, we do a rundown. We
Yeah.
do a
You're
rundown
gonna
to
be
see what the
stuck-
mortgage
how
is
much
and
they
see.
bought it for,
Yep.
how much the mortgage amount is.
Because you're going to probably at some point flip the property, so you want to do almost as the same thing as if you were had a bank involved. So you want to do a title search, I imagine.
Yeah.
You're going to call the town to see if there's any tax.
Always
'cause you're
check
gonna
taxes.
You're going to be
Yeah.
paying for the back.
Yeah,
You're
you buy-
responsible.
Subject to back taxes, water bills,
Condo fees.
condo fees, and condo fees can be big because now
Right.
that there's a new law that went into effect that banks can, the condo associations can record liens every
Yeah.
6 months.
Yep.
So they could have 5 or 6 liens on
So
there.
they'd
you
have
could be
priority.
A lot, and they have priority. So
Right,
you buy
right.
subject to that, and you end up having to pay that when
Right.
you close on it.
Now with condo fees, if you're buying a foreclosed condominium, and I hope Ed Sullivan's impressed now, because we're in the 12-minute mark. We've got more information out than we've got in the last 5
He's
weeks.
typing his little head off.
I
over
have more typing to do than usual.
there. So,
Assessments. So if you're buying a condo and there's some special assessment,
buy
on
subject to it.
Right.
So there's a roof going on, and each unit owner has to pay $4,000.
Well, it's a risk. It's a risky when you buy at an auction. It's risky.
So
taxes,
debunk
water. How about
the-
septic? Septic.
Yeah.
If there's a septic
Oh, that's
system,
great.
you buy subject to a failed septic,
Yeah,
and you have
and
to
that's
pay
a
to put a new one in. Oh yeah, at least
$30,000
30.
endeavor.
Yeah, we use 30 as a baseline, and they could be 50.
Right.
So you would suggest going down to the town hall, finding out about taxes, betterments, if it's private septic.
Should I raise my hand? I have a question.
See, so we're
no,
just
no.
going to pump them for information.
So,
we're going to
Kathy,
see which one
all right,
we can
Kathy.
get in quick enough.
Me. So,
You can ask the audience. Well, okay, Kathy. All right.
So, Harry, like a lot of people say, oh yeah, this piece of property is going to foreclosure or is being foreclosed on. I'm going to get a steal. Debunk that a little bit.
You don't get a steal.
You're not getting a steal.
You don't get
You're
a steal.
getting-
You're bidding against, on these auctions, sometimes
other
15,
professionals.
20, 25 different groups of bidders. So they're going to push that price up. So even if the bank is owed a short amount,
bank wants their money back.
The bank will get their money, and now you're bidding against bidders that also are
Right.
trying to make
And
a
it's probably a
profit.
lot of the same people you see. A lot of these
Yeah,
same
they're
auctions.
professionals.
The other
They're
thing
professional
you see
people.
with foreclosed properties is they haven't been kept up, right? They may need
Yeah,
a
they're
new
a mess.
roof.
Most of them
they
are a
have
mess.
Yeah, if you
bad plumbing.
if you ever made your mortgage payment, you're probably not doing a lot of upkeep.
No. And you buy subject to all the conditions in that house. If it has a structural problem, if the
you don't
foundation
have the
is sinking,
chance to do a home inspection.
Very rare.
So the buyer has to be completely aware of
Yeah.
that.
sometimes the houses are vacant and you can get in before the auction, but that's rare.
Very
Usually,
rare.
all
How
you
would you
all
get
you're
in?
able, the door has to be open.
Okay.
And even then, it's really trespassing.
No,
You're not supposed to go in.
Is a seller, if the lender hires an attorney to do their foreclosure work, can they give you information?
And they give you very little. Very rare if they even tell you how much the outstanding taxes are. You mentioned municipal lien certificate. Sometimes auctioneer will have a municipal lien certificate for everybody to review. But I'd say that's
But you can
1%
go
of the
online
closings.
now, mostly.
Well, you can call.
and
You can call the city.
town.
Yeah, you can call the city or town and
right.
find out.
They're pretty good. There's
So-
a handful that won't give you the information,
Right.
but most will.
Yeah.
So you get a memorandum of sale at close at the auction, right? And it gives you the terms of how you're going to be buying.
Yep.
And you probably have to get your financing within 30 days.
Yep. You have to
Well,
close.
you might have to
You
close within 30 days.
Right.
is what I
Closing.
thought.
So
Oh, absolutely.
there's no financing contingency.
Right.
There's no
Right,
inspection
so you've
contingencies.
waived all your contingencies by getting your deal.
That's why I say, foreclosure is a dangerous business.
Well, it's
buying
people.
it.
It's for people that have cash,
Yeah,
right?
you have
Or,
to have
or
cash.
have a private lender that's willing to cough up the cash in that
Yeah,
much in a quick amount of time.
Yeah, and you have to do your homework and make sure that house is not, the value is there, assuming you're going to have to put in X amount of dollars on every property.
Right.
What's this expression? We always hear this expression, hard money. So, because most lenders are not going to be able to close in 30 days. They don't usually like to close with investors because they don't want to see you flipping this house in 2 months.
Right. They want to make their money.
They want you to have this loan for the next 30 years.
Yep.
So if you go into a bank and say you're an investor, you're boxing yourself out of a lot of mortgage programs.
Unless you go to like a small local lender that you deal with all the time, and they have portfolioed money, like money that they.
Yes. Some of the professionals that come to the auctions have a bank behind them that'll lend, but they've built up a track record with those lenders.
Right. And so it's hard to get in the door.
So that
originally.
first one is so hard to
Right.
do. I mean, you have to really have your cash lined up.
Right.
Yeah.
And if not, some people show up and they think they can go get a mortgage and they can do an inspection.
Yeah.
And they're in for a big shock.
I love the look on your face because, we have lenders that call us and say, "Oh, I just got a title order. It was August 15th or whatever," and they're like closing on the 31st of August. And that's the look.
Yeah,
that you
like,
just,
are you kidding me? The, are you kidding me? Look.
I might be able to pull it off, but I can't make any guarantees. I got a lot of work to do.
No, it's not going to happen. So
Right.
you mentioned hard money. I mean, that's what some of these investors do. They'll have a bank. It's not really a bank. It's usually a group of people that
usually-
lend
invest
money.
like another
Investors.
investor.
Right,
Tony
investors.
has
People
an
that have
Uncle
cash.
Vino that does
Yeah.
hard money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you have a rich father, or maybe you even have a home equity line on your
Right.
current house that you're going to dump
Right.
that
And
into
that's
or
okay to use.
You're going to line up your, you put your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Hard money, you might have to pay back very quickly if it's a certain hard money
Well,
lender,
usually
right?
flip it.
6
Yeah.
months to a year are most
Yeah.
hard money loans, and they're usually 12% or higher.
Yeah.
Right.
With,
With
the
5
2
points.
to 10 points.
Right, right,
So,
right.
people that rely on that, they have to factor in the cost of all their lending, too. And
Right.
that could be a big number if they're going hard money.
Right.
You also you alluded to it. You don't get to inspect the property. We've heard of horror stories where they end up
The pipes were
Yeah.
removed. The
yeah,
copper
the
pipes
copper's
were
piping's
gone.
all removed.
Oh, yeah. And you don't know that.
A lot of
when
times you
buy.
get disgruntled people that are getting
Owners,
foreclosed
yeah.
on. They're blaming the lender,
Yeah.
right? We've
And
seen
they
that before.
trash the house.
They trash the house. They take the fixtures, toilets,
Yeah.
copper piping.
all the cabinets
Right.
gone.
Yeah.
All the,
So
every
you're literally
vanity.
buying it as is condition. What we suggest, let us know if this is correct. If you're not a real seasoned professional, let the bank buy it back, and then
right.
deal with the bank.
Yeah, if
But
you're not,
then-
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, if you're not a seasoned professional buying a foreclosure,
You
you're
shouldn't
better
be
off
a
to work
first-time home
You shouldn't
buyer.
be buying in an auction. You should go through a
Yeah.
real estate broker and buy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good deals with real estate brokers too.
Right.
So I would try to have people align themselves with a good broker in their neighborhood and let them show them property and build a nest egg that way and not try to jump into your first foreclosure and you could lose.
Right.
You can overpay and then you got to fix up the house, and so all the money you put into it could be totally gone.
Right, and then there's a waiting game, right? So you go to the auction, you don't win. Bank buys it back. They hire a broker. They list it. But I've seen it happen in 2 weeks after foreclosure that the property gets listed. But I've seen it a
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
It could be as bad as a short sale where they take two years before
Yeah,
they
it
foreclose.
gets
Some
lost in the-
foreclosures deeds not recorded till 7 years later.
Yeah, they
Just
can be a
'cause-
long time, and sometimes you never even see them come back on the market.
Right, that's
Sometimes
right.
they go to a servicing agent and they have people that buy them from
Right,
them, so
right.
it never even goes to
Right.
the public.
Right. So you just got to move on. Like you have to go find
Well, that's
another
why-
house.
Yeah. So, but if you can find a good deal on a foreclosure, I mean, that's the best time to buy it if you're ready
Right.
for it.
Right.
Right.
And you really have to be
Right.
prepared.
Yeah.
But we always tell people if you're flipping a property, you don't make the money on the sale. You make it on the purchase.
Right.
It's how you buy.
It's how you buy.
Right.
That's where you make it.
And the other thing is we should probably mention too. It's also in how you calculate your costs involved. We had a friend of ours that bought right and sold exactly where he thought it was going to be. Bought it for, I won't say the amounts because he probably, I think he watches. I don't want to. But he bought it right, knew exactly what he was selling for, thought he calculated how much it was going to cost to get to that point, and he was off by a few $100,000.
Yeah, you could be way off on your construction budget.
Well, he put a little bit of heart and soul into it. It turned into...
He personalized it.
Right, so he added on. So even if he had a contract with somebody...
It was more than a flip.
Yeah, it was beautiful when it left. I saw it when he...
Yeah, I mean, so there's a problem when you buy. I mean, you want to fix everything, but then you do want to make a profit on it, so you have to cut some things.
Right.
But, if you're a good property and a flipper in today's market, you really have to give a good product to your buyers.
Right.
All right.
So you really can't cut it too much.
So the no money down's probably not good.
No.
Buying at foreclosure is good. So just the conventional, not good, right? So just the conventional purchase. How do you find your How do you find your properties?
All right. So real estate brokers are a big source of business for me. I mean, I've been in the business 34 years.
Yeah.
So I have people that call me with properties that they're looking to sell.
Yeah.
It might be a property that was under agreement and it fell apart. It could be a good deal, and they know that we can close.
So you're going to jump into that?
Yeah, and they know that.
And you're getting the calls because you're going to be doing it cash.
Right, because I can pay cash, I can
you
waive
can close
inspection,
early.
and I can
you're
go
like
quickly.
the best buyer in the world, right?
Right, so I'm good for a broker.
Yeah.
But I'll buy it at my price. So they know when they come to me.
For the broker.
Yeah. But they're looking to get a
exceptional.
sale. Well, especially if they have a deal that just fell apart.
And if you don't have to do too much work, call Harry. Harry said I'll buy it, but I want
I'll close it
off.
Right, and they'll say, can you close tomorrow? I say, well, maybe the day after tomorrow, but we can close quickly, and I'll bring a contractor in, no home inspection, and we'll pay cash and we'll close.
Right. So you're the ideal.
So how do you estimate the worth of that house?
Well, I know the values in certain markets.
So you actually go on MLS and you see what's being sold.
Yeah. So I'll only buy in areas that I know. Like I'm not going to Springfield because I don't know Springfield, but I'll go to Lynn because I know Lynn.
That's a good move.
Yeah. But I'm sure there's great opportunities in Springfield right now.
And you have a good concept about houses on the market too, right?
Yeah. So I know what's on.
You know if the community is having houses on the market too long.
Okay, I got a little tip for you.
Yeah.
So if you go on MLS, if you have, or you can go through a broker if people have a broker, and you look at a certain city, say Lexington. All right. So you look at all the things that are active on the market, and then compare that to all the things that are contingent or under agreement. And if they're about even, that's okay. There should be about 2/3 under agreement in this market. And that's a sign that town is doing well in their real estate.
So you're sizing up the town, not just the property.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm looking to see, is this town, a good town? And I'm giving an example of a town you don't really know. Like in areas that we're buying, and we know this, because we buy all the time.
Right.
But at auctions, they're all over the place. So there could be something in Sterling, Mass. We don't know anything about that city. So we'll look it up and we'll see, okay, there's 10 listings that are active. Yes, 2/3 is a good, strong buy, a good, strong selling market. Under contract.
Under contract. And then 1/3 is still on the market.
And then you can look at sold listings too. And that sold list should be even bigger than the under agreement.
Okay.
Because you can go back 6 months.
So you're saying houses aren't staying on the market that long.
That's right.
It's competitive, but... If some community has it on the market for too long, your house is going to get thrown in that group.
Yep.
And you gotta.
Well, there's one we did in Plymouth that we didn't know much about Plymouth, and after I bought it at the auction, I started looking at the MLS listing, and there were more houses for sale than there were under agreement.
Right.
And I go, I think we just made a mistake.
Did you?
We ended up just breaking even on that property.
So you got out.
Yeah,
okay.
and it was a great house. It was on a lake. It was a beautiful spot. My friend Jeffrey scouted it, and
What's the supply and demand? There's a lot of houses in Plymouth.
There were a lot for sale, and the prices weren't that high. So we we underestimated what the value would be on the sell.
Okay.
So we paid, I thought it was fair market, but we didn't get enough on the sell. And it was a long way, and there was too much on the market.
And you broke even.
We broke even.
Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Yeah, and I've lost.
Yep.
We do a lot. So it's an average, though.
Right?
It's an average.
Yeah.
You can't look at it all. If you're doing buying and selling a lot now, you can't look at just one property.
Of course.
If you're going to do 12 in a year, you take it as an average and see where.
Yeah.
Right. And
That's
some
a
you'll
good
have
attitude.
good profits on. Some will be nothing. Some will be losses. But in the end, you want to be.
So
ahead.
as an investor, tell us what your week looks like this week and next week. What are you doing?
Okay, so today,
Do you know?
today I went by a couple of properties in Lynn, and we scouted them, and one of them the bank took back. The other one was going off as I was driving here, so I don't know what happened. But we have a schedule of all different properties this week. So this week we're going to Worcester.
Yeah.
And we know nothing about Worcester.
Yeah.
And we're probably not going to buy anything, but we'll kind of scout the market.
Yeah.
And right now in my office, we're working on 3 houses. So they're at different stages of construction. And I was telling Rick before I got here, I stopped at one of them on the way. And, and I hadn't been there.
You're like a general contractor.
I am.
Okay.
I call her a babysitter.
Oh, you're a babysitter.
Yeah, I have to keep on pushing it along.
All right.
So this
this is your
contract.
hobby, right?
Yeah, but I enjoy it.
Yeah,
I really love it.
I would like that too.
I really love it.
Stop
Do you need a helper?
Stop it.
Always.
Harry, don't be impressed. Anyone who comes on, she asks for a job, okay? So
Do I do that, Ed Sullivan?
every show, we've had a stage, or we've had a bank, or we've had, everyone who comes on.
I think she's selective, though. She only wants a job with the right people.
Well, there's profits in it, so it can work. But there's a risk too. So anyway, so I go to this contractor, and I've been there all week, and of course, almost nothing has been done during the week. So part of this, this buying and selling is the renovation, and you have to keep an eye on your project and on your costs and make sure it's moving.
Do you same
Yes,
contractor?
I have a great contractor, a guy named Eric I really like. And he does a great
on
job.
your payroll, right?
Yeah, he basically is on the payroll right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if he doesn't work a week, he doesn't get paid.
Is he going to have a problem going to Worcester?
Yeah, that could be a little bit.
Yeah. I hope he's listening.
Yeah,
but soften the blow.
But
right?
I do have a second group that I use, and one of the guys does work out of Worcester, so that's why we're looking there. But I don't know. I'm still not sure about that market.
Right.
I've heard the properties that go very low.
Well, you're out of your element, right? As far as like supplies.
So there's another hint. Stay with the market you know.
Yeah.
Like for me to jump into an area that I don't know is even more risky than buying in a foreclosure.
Even certain towns might have a disparity of.
Yeah, you really need to know.
Now, how about short sales? You got one coming up, right?
Yeah, I have one coming up. I'm closing on it on Friday.
Wow.
Probably in Saugus. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun project.
So what do you mean short sale? It's your property?
No, I'm under contract on it to buy it.
Oh, to buy it from a short sale.
So what is a short sale? Anyone know? Can anyone tell us?
All right, Kathy,
go ahead.
We'll tell you if you're right.
A short sale is when the lender owns the property, or they don't want to buy the property back at foreclosure, and you can't afford to make the mortgage payments, and so you negotiate with the lender for a lesser amount than what you owe on the house.
Right. So like a $500,000 house might have a mortgage.
85%.
Might have a $550,000 mortgage.
Right.
So you got to negotiate with the lender and say.
If you sold it on the market, your house there's no value there. Like you'd have to come to the closing with $50,000.
Right.
So you just negotiate to get out of the mortgage and get out of the house.
Kathy's blocking a lot of this out of her because for a few years she just only did short sales.
She did a lot of short sales because the banks are accepting less money than they owed.
Right.
Than they're owed. So they don't want all this stuff. They don't want it. They're not in the business to own houses, right? They want to get rid
Especially
of
going into the wintertime, they don't want to have to keep the foreclose on it and keep the heat running.
Especially when we were doing it. They didn't want to foreclose.
We saw like a couple people live in the property, negotiate a short sale for a year and a half, like because the bank truly doesn't want to have to foreclose on it, right?
They're not good at short sales, banks. You know what I mean?
No,
they that's why they take so long. I had one that took 3 years to buy.
Wow.
And I waited and I kept on signing extensions, but there was no reason for that.
What we used to do because we used to have to. We had a team that negotiated. So there was a certain bank. I won't mention them, but they have 3 letters. You might have heard of, but I won't mention the name. But
3 letters.
3 letters.
Yeah, we'll figure. But what we used to do is because every 30 days the negotiator would change.
Right,
so if
you have to start over.
Right, so if we didn't get a certain negotiator we liked, we waited the 30 days.
That's a good move.
And just
because there's some good and some bad negotiators. And if you get a bad one, it's going to sit there.
Right, exactly.
And the thing is, there's stacks. Like I always have tried to picture what I'm calling, hey, this is Kathy at Carter Law Office. They're like rolling their eyes. I don't know who you are. Yeah. But if you could picture their desk or picture their computer
up to here, right? Yeah.
And it was just a day to them. Like,
imagine going to that job every day.
But we had the seller that was so anxious to unload this property and see light at the end of the tunnel. So it was really a hard.
And that person is just like, okay, which one are you? And they're going down the bottom and pulling out that
so
file.
the advantage for a buyer is you're negotiating with a seller, and the seller still has to do everything that normally a seller would do. It's just the short sale, but the seller still has to give you a home inspection. Still has to accommodate you. So in that area, those regards, it's good. But a buyer who's got a couple kids that are going to move into
they can't. That's
not for them.
Yeah, not for them. And
No.
then what else we saw with the short sale clients was that they didn't know that there were executions on their property, and they didn't know about a lot of stuff that we still had. We had to jump through more hoops. We had to negotiate those and then pull those into the short sale negotiation. But they didn't know a lot of stuff because they didn't want to look at their mail, right? The typical, hardship. Every time you open the mail, you owe me more money, you owe this, you owe that. So they kind of put their head in the sand and say, oh, we're in a short sale. And they
wouldn't look.
So they weren't
responsive.
Yeah. And oh, you need to come sign the deed. What do you mean I have to sign the deed? They were beaten down. And then we were
because we were beaten down and there wasn't even our property.
Right.
It was such an exhausting process.
We had. Let's tell about the one where the husband and wife were divorced, house getting foreclosed or short saled. The husband's, all hands on deck, come to the closing. He's like, I can't get my ex-wife to come.
Yeah.
And everybody's freaking out because we had the letters, the short sale, and that was so high. It was like gold.
Yeah,
that expires after a while.
She needed to sign that short sale letter and the deed.
And the deed.
Yeah.
And so the brokers and the husband went into the local courthouse. And I've never seen this in all my years. The judge actually put out an emergency injunction or something, said, if you do not show up to sign this deed, you will be in jail by end of business today.
Yeah, you had a judge that was willing to get this
crazy.
That's how Kathy does it, though.
So
she did show up.
She showed up.
If a seller's giving Kathy a hard time, she goes into court and forces the issue.
The judge to sign that order.
But I was laughing so hard because I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
Because usually you have a petition where, go to court. And those things could take a year or two to go.
A few years.
But I think he was so sick of this divorced couple.
Yeah.
He must have gone marching himself into court every time she changed her name or did something. She was AWOL, and he had just had it up to here with them and said, that's it.
Wow, we got a lot of information. No money downs are a problem. Buying at foreclosures, problem.
Everything's a problem. Short sales are a problem.
Right.
So how do you buy any property now?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess the point is, if you don't listen to our advice and you still want to do something like this, you should call one of these guys and they'll help you out.
Right. Have someone advise you. I mean, I think that's the best advice we can give people today. If this is your first time or you're just kind of looking at it, get someone you trust to help you on this. Don't go in there, and expect to go buy it in an auction.
Give them your phone number in case they want to call.
Is it okay to give my number?
Yeah.
All right, 781-284-6080.
We have a lot of guests that come on.
And extension 1 goes right to me.
Nice.
We have a lot of guests that come on that don't want to give out their phone number.
I'm happy to help anybody.
Some say they work for another competing company if the show doesn't go well. No, I think we got a lot of information out today. Ed Sullivan, you impressed with this or what?
I am super impressed.
You just woke him up. I don't know.
No, he's been typing away.
Okay.
He types all the buzzwords. Thank you, Harry Pass, for coming in.
No problem. My pleasure to come.
This is awesome.
This is good. So we might have to have Harry back to expound on this a little bit.
Do you want me to give my number?
You give your number. Kathy's currently working at
781-944-9222.
Thanks for joining us here on the Real Estate House Party. This is Attorney Rick Carter, Kathy Holtshouser, Paralegal Extraordinaire, an investor extraordinaire, Harry Pass, 781-284-6080.
You got it.
How's that? I still
Thank you,
remember
Rick.
that.
Appreciate it. Yeah,
good job.
Used to be your number.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Okay.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.